Hello, and welcome to Agriland's Dairy Podcast, The Dairy Trail. I'm Hugh Harney, Technical Dairy Specialist for Agriland, and I'll be going out to different farms across the country to see what's going on the farm each week. We are talking spring calving, grazing, dietary requirements, nutrient application, and much more. This week's episode, I travelled to Callan, County Kilkenny, where Eoin Kennedy is calving down 170 Jersey Cross cows. Eoin Kennedy talks to us about his farm partnership arrangement with his parents and his career path after college. He talks about converting from a British Frisian type herd to a Jersey Cross herd. We also get into the nit and grit around calving, from colostrum feeding, calf and cow management, and getting a good control of early grazing. So we're joined now with dairy farmer from Callan, County Kilkenny, Eoin Kennedy. Thanks very much for joining us on the podcast. Do you want to just, Eoin, before we kind of get into the, we're in the middle of calving season now, so there's a lot going on in the farm between cows calving down and you have a good few calves on the ground, as you were saying. So, look, why don't you just kind of give us a background to the farm here? Obviously, you're a UCD dairy business graduate like myself, so you're good stock. So, do you want to just maybe get into how you came about of coming back to the farm? You do a bit in the industry as well, so maybe just touch on that and how you kind of managed it too.
Oh, no, thanks you for coming anyway. Look, this is my parents' farm. Originally, we were milking on a different block, the home block as I call it. My father was milking maybe 50 cows, 60 cows at the time. It was quota time, obviously, and the farm we're standing on today was mainly used for just beef replacements and silage ground. So I went to university, I went to UCD to study dairy business. Didn't really have any idea what I was going to do after it, but I suppose I just went with the flow. And with obviously, as you know, with doing dairy business in UCD, you get the opportunity to travel to New Zealand, and you get to spend a semester down in Moore Park in Cork. So I think those two experiences really influenced me and made me really decide that I really wanted to give dairy farming a crack, and probably saw the potential at home maybe to change things around and drive things on and drive on cow numbers. And it coincided nicely with quotas being abolished at the time. It was 2015 when I went to New Zealand. I suppose did a proposal for the parents, and that this block of ground, there's 46 hectares on this block over here, to set up a milking parlour and build accommodation and milk cows over here instead of on the home block, and use the home block more so just for young stock and silage, because it's slightly smaller. It's only 20 hectares. To a bit convincing, because there wasn't a shed, there wasn't electricity, there wasn't anything on this block.
You were starting from scratch really here, like it was a good bit of work involved.
Completely greenfield site, bar. There was a 3-span shed, hay barn in it, that we still had to put a new roof on it. So really, you could say we started from absolute scratch. If you were to do it today, obviously you just couldn't do it. Just at the time, I suppose it coincided nicely with, there was good grants going for young farmers. CapEx was at a reasonable level, whereas today you wouldn't say that it is. So there was everything going for me at the time, I suppose. And
even for myself, you look like even trying to suss out a plan for a farm partnership. When did you start the conversation? When did you get that going? Because sometimes that's the biggest thing is, getting that conversation going. And I I know my father can be stubborn at times. So how did you come up with a kind of agreement that would suit all parties, let's say?
Yeah, I suppose I have 5 siblings. I have a twin brother as well. So I was always kind of, I suppose, understood that I was probably the one that showed the most interest and was going to probably get involved in the farming here. But no, we got there eventually. I'm probably the stubborn one in this household, I'd say. But yeah, look, you can turn back. I do look back now.
You're kind of reaping the rewards now. I see, your herd is fairly. It's a crossbred herd, so they're kind of a small, robust kind of a cow. Fertility wise, you were saying they're fairly good. So maybe just touch on what type of herd you're running here and why you chose to run this type of herd.
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually started out with, I suppose my father would have always had British Frisian type stock. So when I started out, we started off 90 cows the first year, so I would have bought in about 40, 50 heifers that year. And they were all similar stock to what my father had, kind of British Frisian black and whites, and probably plodded along for 3 years at that stage. And I felt we were doing things fairly right with grass, and we were getting reasonable performance. But it was 3 years later, I was kind of looking at people, my peers who I was in discussion groups with, and I wasn't happy with how things were going, and I kind of started investigating what was going on, that I wasn't maybe getting the performance I felt like.
You were kind of benchmarking your black and whites towards what you were seeing out there towards discussion groups, was it?
Yeah, like I felt, and I'm not giving myself too much credit or anything, but like I felt we were doing things fairly right with grass and putting the right feed in front of cows, and just they weren't throwing it back at us. And I suppose, I kind of made a decision then, and it was 2020, it was during COVID, I probably had too much time in my hands, that I wanted to change it.
Yeah.
So it was that summer I went around to different herds. There was a lot of surplus stock around that year. I was lucky. But I remember just going through to a few, I suppose, LIC crossbred herds and just seeing, I suppose, the system, the performance of the cows. They were, as you said, robust, fitted into the system very well. The kind of system I wanted to run, I suppose, where it was a very simple approach to things, getting cows out to grass and very little in between that.
Okay.
And I just said, look, I suppose I like anyone else, had to think in my head about the surplus calf. But I said, no, look, like the positives are there to be seen. And I went for it. I sold my heifer calves that year. I bought in heifer calves from a LIC based herd off Jamie Costin down in Dungarvan in Waterford. Did the same thing the following year. Yeah. Did the same thing the following year. And then that year, I suppose I calved down that stock for the first time. So I had 40 heifers came into the herd here, all crossbred, and literally it was I'd say September, October that year. I just said to myself, that's it, I'm done. I sold the whole herd, 80, 90 cows, 100. I think it was nearly 100 cows I sold that year, and I bought in all LIC stock, in their place. So I'm only 2 years, I suppose, of that type of stock on here now, and I'm happy with how they're going.
Right, yeah, very good. Look, and I suppose it's interesting because I want to know how you kind of convince your father of that, your mother and father to go that direction, because like with dairy farmers, you could nearly insult their family before you can insult their herd of cows. Do you know what I mean? So maybe just talk us through how that kind of conversation came about, and how you convince your mother and father that this was the way to go.
Yeah, I know it wasn't without a bit of difficulty. Like, I suppose I'd earned my stripes to a certain extent to that stage too. Like, I was probably 4 years far at that stage, and things hadn't, fallen asunder yet. Yes, yeah. And look, I had my reasons. Like, we had payments to make on the buildings here and everything, and I said, look, I'm not here to be in third gear. Like, I want to be in fifth gear, and unless you have the right type of cow that's going to suit your system, it's very hard to get into the fifth gear. Yes, exactly, yeah. So it was an easy decision on my end, but obviously, as you said, it took convincing. I'm probably lucky that they left me at it as well. And I'm lucky.
Kind of on you if it didn't work.
I'm lucky they both own a set of golf clubs each and kind of have their own hobbies, and don't really tend to interfere with me too much. I know that's not the case in a lot of yards, as I see in my own job now at the moment. I see it on a lot of yards that's not the case. So
maybe just talk us through then, managing kind of labour on this farm, managing staff, and it's a busy time of the year. We'll get into the thick of the calving season stuff now in a few minutes. But just before we do, just like, because you're working off farm, and I suppose that comes with its own responsibilities. So I suppose just give us a quick run through and kind of how you manage things on this home place.
Yeah, I suppose I was so impressed with my own journey with the type changeover to the type of stock that I wanted, that 2 years ago I started working with LIC Ireland. Yeah. Obviously selling dairy semen, New Zealand semen in Ireland. Yeah. So when I took that on, obviously I had to make sure that the farm here is very simple and that I had everything in place that it could be run more or less without me, with me just overseeing it. So as you can see, we're standing here now, like, it's very well set up. There's excellent facilities. There's a 24-unit modern milking parlour with really good handling facilities. There's 180 odd cubicles, topless cubicles mostly. And then there's good calving facilities, and then there's good facility to rear calves, and I suppose it's just very simple. There's one tractor here with a scraper on the back of it, and absolutely nothing else. Everything else contracted out. No fertiliser, no slurry. It's all contracted to everything. And it suits me. I'm only good at braking machines. I'm not good at driving them.
So you're a stock man, not a machinery man. But I suppose so. Like, you've set up your facilities here that it is kind of very, very easily managed.
Yeah. No, in fairness, I have staff here at the moment. Now my parents wouldn't be terribly involved at the moment. So yeah, that's how we run it more or less. I wouldn't be here obviously in my role at LIC. I'd be on the road a lot. Going around to see different farms. So yeah, it's a good balance. I like getting my Wellingtons on too, and coming out here, and I had the place fairly well set up here, and I find it hard to kind of just stay doing the same thing every year. I kind of like to challenge myself, so that's where the job I did I see came in. It was something different, and I'm enjoying it. I want to stay at it.
Yeah, and I suppose you pick up ideas from other farms as well, so that's a huge thing as well.
And I suppose I had my own journey here with the stock that I went about improving it the way I did, and kind of gives me great satisfaction maybe to help other people do the same, because mixed messages out there about what type of cow you should be farming. Everyone's different, but definitely I think this system can work for a lot of people.
Okay, very good. And I suppose we'll get into kind of the calving stuff, Eoin. So maybe just talk us through. So obviously you've the open top cubicles, so and they're working a treat for yourself. So in terms of cows springing up and calving down, what's the kind of protocol around getting colostrum into that calf and managing the cow around the time of calving and after calving?
Yeah, well, I start by saying I'm not going to claim that we do everything right here or anything like that, but it's a very simple system. As you see there, we have divisions in the cubicles. So as cows start springing up, they get closer and closer to the straw bedding area. We've a massive straw bedding area there. You could have 20 cows on it at the one time. So as cows start springing up, we divide them in. We probably do it every 2 days now at the moment, because it changes so quickly. You see, especially with some of the crossbeds, they really do spring up very quickly. And then once the calves drop, obviously we have good cameras here and everything, but there's always someone here as well. We'd have, say, a supply of colostrum there to kind of get into the calf straight away. I'm kind of reluctant for calves to be tubed here. I prefer if we can at all to get them to suck. There's actually a sweet spot when the calf drops first that they'll definitely have more kind of I suppose ability to suck, and I always just prefer to get the colostrum into them that way. I know time doesn't allow sometimes too at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Sometimes you're just thinking of getting back into the house, but you find if you can get them sucking at all, it just makes life a bit easier, even in the aftermath when you're getting them going.
Exactly, and like Dan here is working with me. He'd be very much of that opinion too. So he'd spend a lot of time, and my girlfriend Emer as well, and my dad definitely spend a lot of time with the calves, try and get colostrum into them. And then as you said, it's very easy to train them onto the feeder straight away then as well, and just makes things a lot easier, I think, on man and beast, and it's better for the calf, I think, in the long run.
And I suppose so they're will the calves be on that colostrum transition milk for 4 to 5 days? And when do you test then the milk, or what's the procedure around getting milk back into the bulk tank then?
Yeah, well, as I said, not the model farmer, I don't test the colostrum. I get it into them, and it mightn't come from their own mother, but and then they stay on transition milk, which I think is very important for probably a week. They stay around here, then they go back to my parents' yard. That's where the calves are reared. We have really good calf facilities there. After 4 days, cows here are going in the tank and it's going to the co-op. That's kind of the system we run. It's just the simplest way of doing it with how we have our, I suppose, the split yards and everything.
Yeah, well, look, exactly. If it's working, why change it? So I suppose then we look at the cow now. So when they first calve down, do you have any certain things that you're doing in terms of, do you get a calcium bolus, or do you do something like that, or what's the kind of the dietary requirements of the cow when she calves down first? You're going to kind of slowly transition her onto meal, getting her out to grass, that type of thing.
I suppose the most important thing I think is the pre-game. Make sure their mineral spec is up to scratch before calving down. Like my local vet Kieran Devaney does a great job. He'd always so we'd always get him blooded, and he'd give me recommendations, and we follow it, and we make sure that we want calves with loads of vigor, and we want cows to get up after calving and clean, not to have retained placentas and that kind of thing. So I think the pre-game is more important than the after-game, if you get me. Then once they calve, they I suppose we run in separate blocks. The milkers probably are at grass and silage. Then for 4 days until they're kind of enter the milker mob, will say. The fresh cows are just on silage. We don't feed a huge amount of meal here. We're feeding 3 kilos there at the moment. Probably could be feeding less if we go out to grass a bit more.
What would you aim to feed then in a year, meal wise?
Last year we fed 730, and it was an atrocious year. So, and this is quite a heavy farm as well. So it would be as little as possible. Aiming for 450 kilos of milk solids off a kind of a 480 kilo cow. Like it would be a smaller cow here. Yeah,
and your protein and your fats, it's showing that you're feeding that cow well. I suppose you're nearly 5 and 4 in terms of fat and protein, are you?
I'm well, last year was just a poor year for protein. I think just the spring last year killed it a little bit, so we're at 3.85. They did 5.1 fat. So we'll see how they go this year, kind of thing. You're always trying to hit that benchmark, the 5% fat and 4% protein, and we definitely have the genetics to do it. It's whether we can provide the raw materials to them to enable them to do it.
I suppose when we're on the topic of protein, I suppose getting that protein up in the early lactation is crucial, and I suppose it's all about the diet and managing the diet. So I think the main thing is trying to get cows out of grass, and so obviously you've cows up the back end there that are grazing away. So I suppose just in terms of getting them out, the kind of workload around getting them out, how you manage it, allocations wise and covers wise. Like, so I suppose even just starting off, do you have an idea of what your opening farm cover was when you went out?
Yeah, we have a lot of grass on the farm here. We're at around 1,200 farm cover. That's why I suppose I am fairly brave at the moment about getting them out. If utilisation isn't fantastic, I'm not too worried. I kind of want to get grass into those cows so I can get them moving. As you said, I think last year we had an all-time low for a crossbred herd. We were down at 3.3 protein at one stage. Like, it was all silage, and look at the weather just didn't allow to get cows out. That was it, and the cows didn't have enough energy to keep them going. So to keep energy in the diet, we need to keep them at grass. So it's the be all and end all really. And at the moment we're definitely getting our 3 hours a day, even on the wet days. And today is actually a fine day. I know it rained a nice bit last night, but we'll try and get them out for another 3 hours, maybe this evening after milking. If we're determined enough, I probably might hang around and bring them in maybe a bit later.
So you might aim to try and just get it maybe 6 to 7, 8 maybe kgs of dry matter grass into their diet, and then kind of make up the rest through meal and silage.
Yeah, we cut excellent quality silage, in fairness. Probably last spring kind of taught me a lesson that way, that you need good quality silage. It's very easy, even for a dry cow, it's easy to stretch good silage rather than putting, God knows what expensive feed through bad silage for milkers. So that's kind of the way we run it here. We'd have touching on 80 DMD bale silage, and even the pit silage would be fairly high as well, And then, we try and feed as little meal as possible. I don't think there's any need if you can get the other bits right,
Yeah, very good. And look, suppose we'll wrap it up shortly now. So, in terms of just the future of this farm, what's the plan now for the next couple of years? Is it consolidate what you have and stay going with what you have? Breeding, you seem to be very happy with the cow you have. So, what's next for yourself?
Yeah, I suppose we're in a good position here, thankfully. Just, as you say, consolidate, stay breeding dry type of cows, stay using the genetics that I believe in. And reap the rewards, hopefully. Keep an eye on costs. I think cost control is essential. And I don't know what will happen on the road. Depends on what happens. If opportunities come up, you'll have a look at them, But I'm happy with where I am too, and I'm happy. I enjoy my work with LIC. I will continue that as well. And that's kind of where I see myself. I suppose that's a boring answer, but
no, 100%. Look, you want to stay going the way you're going, and if an opportunity comes up, you might take a look at it. So look, Eoin, we'll leave it there. I would just want to thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. And we just want to wish you the very best of luck with the rest of the calving season and the rest of, if it's going out at slurry or fertiliser or whatever it is, hopefully everyone is safe and all goes well. So thank you very much, Owen.
No worries. Thanks, Hugh.
So that's all for this week's episode of The Dairy Trail. I'd like to thank our guest, Eoin Kennedy, for giving up his time during the mad rush of calving. And if you are listening to this podcast and want to feature, you can contact us at Agriland. And if you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to rate and review or share the podcast with a friend or a fellow farmer. Thanks for listening.